Here's the situation. Very famous consumer products company had a $2.5 billion division in North America. The division had not done well over the last couple of years. Even though the company makes very, very innovative products, they're products that you're all familiar with, the division in North America just had not hit its numbers. They brought in a new business unit president to run North America, and he knew that things were not good on the leadership team, but he wanted to find out exactly what was going on and what he needed to do in order to help the team improve. So he hired us, and once we got involved, we said the first thing we have to do is interview everybody on the team, but we also want to give them a survey to find out how they're actually functioning. So we gave them a team assessment survey. This is a survey my colleague Diane Nilsson and I put together, and the first iteration came out about 20 years ago. And since then, we've used this survey with over 2,000 teams. The survey is an online survey, takes about 15 minutes to complete, and provides all sorts of very good information about teams. So given that scenario, one of the things we ended up doing was giving everybody the team assessment survey. Now, the team assessment survey is built around the Rocket model, which is our proprietary model for building high-performing teams. It also provides teams with benchmarking feedback, how they compare to other teams. The survey is also very good at pinpointing what the team is doing well and what the team could do better. It's an online survey that takes about 15 minutes to complete. We administered the team assessment survey to everybody on the North American leadership team. All right. Once we have that data, we generate a feedback report, and we start reviewing the report with the team. The first piece of information we look at is on page 3 of the report, and you see an example of it here. You'll see the 8 rocket model components listed, and you'll see a series of scores. Those scores range from 0 to 100. With 50 being representative of a typical team. Higher scores are associated with higher performing teams, and teams that score 75 or above on any component is really associated with a high performing team. Lower scoring teams, less than 50, are associated with dysfunctional teams, and as we can see here, these scores are all pretty low. The 2 takeaways I take from this particular analysis is, overall, what are the level of scores? Are they high, medium, or low? And then secondly, I look at which scores are relatively strong or high and which scores are relatively low. As we go through the report, the next section talks about overall team results, and this is what we call the team effectiveness quotient, or TQ. All a TQ score is a combination of the scores, or an average of the scores on the previous page. We just look at those 8 scores, total them up, compute an average, and this is the TQ score. Now that TQ score has 2 meanings. One is, what's the overall performance of the team? As we can see here, the TQ score is 10, so overall this is in the bottom 10% of all teams across the globe. The other thing that score represents is how the leader's ability to build a high-performing team. Right now, that TQ score indicates that this leader is not capable of building a high-performing team. Now, in this particular scenario, this person is new, so that score doesn't get associated with him or her. But if this individual had been leading the team for a year and they got a TQ score of 10, this would indicate that this person is really struggling to build a team. The other thing you'll see on this particular page is the rating scale used to rate the items. 5-point rating scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. That rating scale was used to rate the 45 items in the survey. As we go through the analysis, the first thing we're going to look at is something called the component results. And you can see at the bottom of this page, this is the 5-point rating scale. That's what those tick mark represents. Those blocks represent either the team average in the blue or the team leader score for that particular item. Whenever you see a flag occur on the right side of the graphic, it means there's a fundamental disagreement in how that item was rated. It means there was a group of people who rated that particular item a 1 or a 2 or off to the left of the rating scale, and there's another group of people who rated it a 4 or a 5. Now, it could be that those 2 camps of people are interpreting the item differently. It could be they have a different frame of reference when they look at the item, or they have pretty strong disagreements about how they actually see that item playing out for a team. We get into pages 6 to 13 of the report. Now what you see is a page for each component of the rocket model. There's a percentile score at the top of the page, and that page is, that score is consistent from page 3 earlier in the report. It's the same score. Then what you're going to see is a description of what that component's all about, what a high score on that component looks like, what a low score on that component looks like. You'll get some specific interpretive comments, and those interpretive comments are based on that percentile score up above. And then towards the bottom of the page, you'll actually see the items from the questionnaire. You'll see the rating scale. Again, that's the 1 to 5 rating scales with the tick marks ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And then you'll see team member scores or team leader scores in terms of the average scores people rated those particular items. On page 14, you'll see qualitative comments. We asked team members to describe what the team needs to keep doing in order to be successful. We also asked the team members to indicate what the team needs to start doing, stop doing, or do differently in order to be more effective. Those comments are found here. Each block represents a comment from a particular team member. There's also analysis towards the end of the report called the group versus team working style. We believe there's a big difference between groups versus teams. All right? Groups are entities where people have individual goals. What one person does has very little impact on anybody else. And they basically get rewarded or punished based upon their individual results. Swimming teams, track teams, golf teams, sales teams are mostly groups. We talk about teams, but the reality is everybody on those teams have their own individual goals. What one person doesn't have any impact on anybody else, and people win or lose based upon their individual accomplishments. Teams are quite different. Teams would be like a soccer team, a football team, a hockey team. All right? There's a common goal, which is to win the game. What one person does impacts everybody else, and at the end of the game, you either win or lose together. We think there's a big difference between groups and teams, and what this analysis does is identify where does this particular group fall in the group versus team continuum. Scores that are farther to the left indicate more groups. Scores that are farther to the right are more indicative of teams. What we have found is that most of the teams that we work with, and we work with about 2,500 teams now, fall somewhere in the middle. They have some mix of group versus team characteristics, and this is exactly what we're seeing here. The end of the report talks about additional resources. By that I mean, we're not going to just provide teams with feedback and say good luck. What we're going to do is say, yes, here's your feedback, and here's where you can go to learn how to improve. So there's 2 sets of resources available to teams. One is our new book called Ignition, which provide practical guidance about how to improve team performance. On our website, www.therocketmodel.com, we've got additional resources or support materials available to teams. These support materials consist of PowerPoint decks, forms, handouts, and different sorts of articles to help teams resolve particular problems. Those are the problems that were identified using the team assessment survey. Here we see the book chapters. And again, this is referenced in the team assessment survey feedback report. You'll see that the book chapters are sort of organized around some interesting themes. One is the first 2 chapters are just everything people should know about a team. Here's some just basic blocking and tackling skills for people to understand how teams work and how to facilitate team activities. The next section, part 2, really talks about different team problems. How do you properly launch a new team? How do you manage a matrix team? How do you combine teams? And what those chapters do is provide us with all kinds of real practical guidance and advice about how to do that properly. And then the last part of the book really gets at different applications. So how do I properly inherit a new team? How do I train leaders how to build teams? How can I use these materials to help identify and develop high potentials? But like the TV commercial, wait, there's more. And in the book, it's the same thing. In this case, we've got 40 different team improvement activities. These are activities designed to address a specific team problem. Now, these team improvement activities are not some sort of touchy-feely, namby-pamby kind of activities. We believe teams get better by doing real work. So these are real activities designed to help teams address very specific team issues, like how do you end up helping teams create meetings that are efficient and effective? How do you create a set of rules that team members can abide to? How do you improve buy-in on a team? That's what the different team improvement activities are. There are 40 of those activities in the Ignition book, and the step-by-step instructions for doing those activities are described in the book. In conclusion, what does the team assessment survey do for you? Well, one, it provides benchmarking feedback. You can see how your team stacks up against other teams that are similar to yours. Secondly, it helps teams pinpoint their strengths and areas of improvement. The survey only takes 15 minutes to complete and is usually completed both by the team leader and everybody on the team. It's straightforward and easy to interpret. And really what the team assessment survey is really designed to do is help teams have the right conversations. Yes, we get numbers. We can see how well your team stacks up compared to everybody else. But really what we're really interested in is helping the teams have the right conversations. And not only we're going to help the teams have the right conversations, but then we'll link those conversations to specific activities described in Ignition, our new Teams book, as well as support materials, so that teams can not only talk about what's going on with the team and what they need to do, but they can actually take action on certain things to help the teams get the next level of performance. If you want more information about the team assessment survey, you can check out our book Ignition, which describes the survey in more details and some of the characteristics about it. You can check out the Rocket Model website. Under support materials, you'll see under Activity 6, you'll see an example of what a team assessment survey feedback report looks like. Or you can contact my colleague Diane Nielsen or myself for more information.